My ex-husband took half of everything we built, our business, our dreams, and our future. Now, after years of betrayal, he's back, desperate for my help. But this time I hold all the power and he'll regret ever crossing me. My name is Vanessa, and I'm a 38-year-old entrepreneur. It wasn't always this way, though. I didn't grow up in a family of wealth or privilege. In fact, the first time I ever saw a business from the inside was when I worked my first part-time job at a small cafe during high school. But I've always had this fire in me, a drive to succeed, to prove I could make something of myself. Today, I'm a self-made millionaire, and my ex-husband is begging for my help. It wasn't always like this, though. In fact, it wasn't that long ago when we were partners in everything: love, life, and business. And when everything came crashing down, he took half of what we built together. It's ironic, isn't it? The same person who left me with nothing is the one now asking for a handout. But let me take you back to where it all began. The dream that started as a glimmer in my eye, the ambition that kept me awake at night. We started small. Jason and I were partners in every sense, not just in marriage, but in the business we built together. The company was ours, built from the ground up. I remember the late nights spent working side by side, the phone calls with investors, the spreadsheets, and the constant worry about whether we would make it. Every win felt like a personal victory. Every setback was a test of our resolve. I met Jason in my mid-20s, just when I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could build something substantial. He was charismatic, charming, and driven, the type of person who made everything seem possible. We met at a business networking event in New York, both of us fresh-faced and eager. He had just sold his first startup for a decent amount, and I was working in tech sales. We clicked immediately. He talked a big game, and I was impressed. He told me he had plans to build the next big thing. I didn't know at the time, but those words would define the rest of my life. It didn't take long for us to start dating, and within a year, we were inseparable. Jason and I shared a vision. We both believed in the power of innovation and the possibility of changing the game in whatever industry we chose. By the time we got married, we were also working on a project together. Our company was born from a late-night conversation about the future of tech and business, and by the time we decided to dive in, we had everything we needed: the idea, the energy, and the will to make it happen. The beginning was the best part. We were in sync, running the company, managing the finances, making the decisions together. We were unstoppable. There were moments where we would sit in our small office, looking out at the New York skyline, talking about what we would do when we became successful. The idea of building something from the ground up was intoxicating, and we did it. Slowly but surely, we made a name for ourselves. Our company, a tech startup, began to gain traction. Investors were impressed, and we attracted clients who saw the value in what we were offering. Everything was on track. We were living the dream, or so I thought. What I didn't see, what I couldn't have possibly predicted, was that behind the scenes, cracks were forming in our relationship. Jason, the person I thought I knew so well, was changing. As the business grew, so did his ego. And while I stayed grounded, focused on the work, he became obsessed with the fame, the recognition, the idea of being a tech mogul. There were signs, little things that I brushed off at first. He started staying out late, taking meetings without me, making decisions without consulting me. He'd say things like, "I've got this," or "You focus on what you're good at, I'll handle the rest." The first time he said that, I didn't think much of it. But the more it happened, the more I started to feel sidelined. It was like he was pushing me out of the very thing I had helped create. And when I tried to confront him about it, he'd dismiss me, telling me I was being emotional or too sensitive. But I stayed. I stayed because I believed in the dream we built together. I stayed because I loved him and thought we could overcome anything, especially something as trivial as egos getting in the way. Little did I know, the biggest challenge was yet to come. And then, one day, without any warning, it happened. Our company was growing faster than ever, attracting major attention from investors, and Jason decided he wanted a larger piece of the pie. He suggested we expand, not just the business, but our personal lives as well. He wanted a bigger house, more expensive cars, a more extravagant lifestyle. I wasn't against growth, but this felt different. It felt like he was pushing for something that wasn't in line with our original vision. One afternoon, I walked into the office to find papers spread across the table, papers that outlined a new business deal he had made without consulting me. I was blindsided. When I asked about it, he shrugged it off, telling me it was nothing major. That's when I realized he had been making decisions behind my back, acting as though the company was solely his. The trust that had once been the foundation of everything between us began to erode. But I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to rock the boat. We had worked so hard and I didn't want to jeopardize everything we had built, especially not over something that felt so trivial at the time. But in the back of my mind, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how bad it would get. The first crack in our relationship was small, but by the time it had grown, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And when it finally shattered, it took everything we built with it. The day Jason blindsided me with the news that he was filing for divorce was the day everything changed. I never saw it coming. I knew we weren't in the best place, but I thought we could work through it. I was wrong. The papers were delivered to me while I was sitting in our shared office, going through client proposals. I remember looking at the envelope and feeling a knot tighten in my stomach, but I thought it was just a formality. Some legal stuff we'd need to deal with. But when I opened it and saw the words petition for divorce, my world collapsed. I could barely breathe. My hands were shaking as I read the document over and over, as if the words would magically change. But they didn't. There was no negotiation, no chance to work things out. Jason was done, and in the blink of an eye, our entire life together, the company we had built, the plans for our future, all of it was over. The emotional toll was immense, but it didn't stop there. Jason didn't just take the easy way out. He took the company too. I was blindsided by how aggressively he fought for control. What was once ours, something we had both poured our blood, sweat, and tears into, now became a battleground. And despite the fact that I had been by his side every step of the way, helping build the brand, working endless hours, and being the backbone of the operation, he decided that I didn't deserve my share. When the legal teams got involved, the true ugliness came to light. Jason claimed that the business was his creation, that I had merely supported him, and that my contributions didn't warrant equal ownership. He painted me as just a sidekick in his success story, and for a moment I almost believed it. His words cut deeper than I ever could have imagined. How quickly he turned on me, how easily he discounted everything we had achieved together. The betrayal wasn't just in his actions, but in the way he dismissed me entirely. In the divorce settlement, Jason pushed for half of everything. But that wasn't all. He demanded control of the business, leaving me with only a few shares and a dwindling piece of the company we had once dreamed of together. As if that wasn't enough, he then made sure that any future growth would be in his hands alone. It was his way, or the highway. I was forced out of my own company, left with nothing but a bitter taste in my mouth and a deep sense of injustice. I can still remember the first few days after the separation. It was like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. My emotions were a whirlpool of rage, disbelief, and deep sorrow. I couldn't understand how someone I had shared so much of my life with could betray me like this. I was devastated, and to make matters worse, there were legal battles to fight. But I didn't have the luxury of time to wallow. Life didn't stop for my pain, and neither did the world around me. Jason, with his newfound sense of entitlement, seemed to revel in the fact that he had won. But I was determined not to let him have the last laugh. I may have been knocked down, but I wasn't going to stay down. It wasn't just about money or business anymore. It was about proving that I could make it on my own, that I didn't need him, that I could stand up, dust myself off, and build something far more meaningful. It was time to rebuild. I had nothing left but my determination, and for the first time in years, I focused solely on myself. I decided to put everything I had into creating my own business, one that would be built on my terms, without anyone telling me how to do things. I started small. I took on freelance projects, building my brand slowly but steadily. There was no big, flashy moment, no sudden influx of capital. It was just me, hustling, but I was free. Free from the toxic relationship, free from the betrayal, and most importantly, free to make my own choices. The first few months were tough, like starting from scratch all over again, but every day I pushed forward. I built my network, refined my skills, and focused on what I was passionate about. Slowly but surely, clients started to notice my work. I built a reputation for delivering high-quality results, and before I knew it, I had a steady stream of business. What kept me going wasn't just the idea of success, but the notion of redemption. Every time I landed a new contract, every time I completed a project, I knew I was proving to myself and to Jason that I could thrive without him. Every milestone felt like a victory in the face of everything he had taken from me. The truth was, it wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about reclaiming my identity. I had spent so many years building his dream, his empire, that I had lost sight of my own ambitions. But now, everything was different. I wasn't just working for someone else's vision, I was building mine. I wasn't just his partner, I was my own boss. I was finally creating something that was all mine, and there was nothing more fulfilling than that. But the best part was the quiet confidence that came with it. The freedom of knowing that I didn't need Jason or anyone else to validate my success. I had done it on my own. It wasn't easy, it was grueling, but it was worth it. By the time I had built a solid foundation for my new business, I had done more than just survive. I had thrived, and the more I grew, the more Jason's voice in my head started to fade into the background. But I wasn't finished. I wasn't done proving to myself that I was capable of more. And then, just when I thought I was moving on, Jason showed up again. But this time, it wasn't with a divorce lawyer or a demand for more. It was a plea for help. He needed me. And I couldn't help but wonder, was this his way of coming back into my life? Was he finally realizing what he had lost? Or was he simply trying to get something he could no longer get elsewhere? In any case, the ball was now in my court. He had taken everything from me once. But now, the question was, would I help him? Or would I take the final step toward cutting the ties completely? It was early morning when I got the first message. The notification popped up on my phone while I was in the middle of reviewing some important contracts. The name that flashed on my screen made my heart skip a beat. Jason. I hadn't heard from him in months, not since the legal settlement had been finalized. The divorce was long done, and our interactions had been limited to the occasional legal matter. So why was he reaching out now? I opened the message cautiously. It was simple. Vanessa, I need to talk. Can we meet? I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to ignore it, to block him completely out of my life, to keep moving forward with my new business. But a part of me was curious. Maybe I just wanted to know what he wanted. Maybe I wanted closure, some final piece to this story that had been left unfinished. So I agreed. We set a time to meet later that afternoon at a small cafe in the city, the same one we used to frequent when we first started our company. The irony of it didn't escape me. The place where we once sat side by side, talking about our future, was now the location where we would meet for the first time since everything fell apart. When I arrived, Jason was already there, sitting at a table by the window. His appearance was different, no longer the confident, charming entrepreneur who once charmed his way through meetings and deals. He looked tired, older, and his once perfect suit seemed slightly off-kilter. I could tell he hadn't been taking care of himself. He stood when he saw me, offering a weak smile. Vanessa, he said softly, thank you for agreeing to meet. I nodded, keeping my distance. What's this about, Jason? He sat back down, running a hand through his hair. He seemed nervous, something I never thought I'd see in him, but there was an underlying desperation in his voice when he finally spoke. I've hit a rough patch. I've lost everything, Vanessa. The company is tanking, investors are pulling out. I can't even make payroll this month. I'm drowning. I looked at him in silence, trying to process his words. Part of me wanted to feel some sort of sympathy, but the other part was hardening, remembering all the ways he had cut me out of our company, how he had betrayed me. I didn't come here to ask for your pity, he continued, but I need your help. You're the only one who can help me turn things around. You were always the one who made the right calls, who kept everything moving forward when I was too busy, well, doing other things. The audacity of it. After everything he had done, he was now here asking for my help. A part of me wanted to walk out, to tell him that he was on his own and that he had no right to come back into my life like this. But another part of me, the part that hadn't fully let go of the past, was struggling. I had helped build what he had, and in some strange way, I felt responsible for it all. He saw the hesitation in my eyes and pushed further, leaning in slightly. I know I screwed up. I know I was a jerk. But I've changed. I've learned. I need you, Vanessa. I need your expertise, your vision, please. I was quiet for a long time, thinking about what he had said. The idea of helping him, of returning to the business world that I had left behind to build my own empire, felt like a step backward. I had worked too hard to get to where I was now. I had proven to myself that I could make it without him, without the toxic influence of his ego and manipulation. But there was a part of me that felt conflicted. I could help him. I could fix things for him, make his company successful again. But what would that mean for me? Would I risk everything I had built, everything I had fought for, just to save a sinking ship that had once been my life? I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on me. Jason wasn't just asking for help, he was asking me to return to a life I had walked away from, a life that had caused me so much pain and betrayal. How could I even consider going back to that? I'm not who I was back then, Jason, I finally said, my voice steady but firm. You want me to come back into your world? You want me to fix everything you've broken? I'm not that person anymore. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. I'm not asking you to come back to me, Vanessa. I'm asking you to come back to the business just to help, please. The words stung, just to help. Did he really think I could just walk back in like nothing had happened? Like the last few years of my life hadn't been a journey of rebuilding myself and my career? That everything I had accomplished was just a byproduct of some misplaced sense of loyalty? I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts. You don't get it, do you, Jason? I've built something from the ground up, something that's entirely mine. I've proven to myself that I don't need you or anyone else to make it. What you're asking isn't just help, it's a chance for you to take advantage of me again. I won't let you do that. There was a long silence between us. Jason didn't speak for a moment, just sat there looking defeated. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of the person I had once loved, vulnerable, struggling, and far from the confident entrepreneur he had been. I don't expect you to forgive me, Vanessa, he said quietly, his voice a little broken. But I need help. I can't do it alone, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, even if that means working with you, no matter how much I messed up. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My decision had already been made. I can't fix this for you, Jason. I can't be your safety net anymore. You're on your own. And with that, I turned and walked away. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was done. Done with the past. Done with him, and done with being someone's second choice. He had taken everything from me once, but I wasn't going to let him take my future. As I stepped out into the busy streets of the city, I felt lighter. The weight of the past, of his betrayal, seemed to lift off my shoulders. It was over. There would be no turning back. Jason's plea for help was just another reminder that he couldn't take responsibility for his own choices, and that was something I wasn't willing to carry anymore. Now it was time to fully embrace the life I had worked so hard to build, without him, without his baggage, and without the shadows of what had once been. The next few weeks passed in a blur. At first it was difficult to shake the remnants of that conversation with Jason. His plea lingered in the back of my mind, but I pushed it away, focusing on the business I had built, the one that no longer had his fingerprints all over it. I was busy, working long hours, refining my strategy, expanding my network. There was no room for distractions, especially not from him. But there was something else too. As I climbed higher in my own venture, a nagging feeling started to creep in. I wasn't thinking about Jason anymore, but I was thinking about me, about what I had overcome, what I had done all by myself. Every client I signed, every project that went smoothly, it was all a testament to how far I had come. And somewhere in the midst of the hustle and grind, I found something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not just financial peace, but mental and emotional peace. I wasn't carrying around the baggage of my past anymore. I wasn't living in the shadow of a man who had once controlled my every decision. What I hadn't realized until then was how much I had let him control me for so long. Even after the divorce, after the business split, I had unknowingly continued to live my life based on his presence, the fear of his opinion, the weight of his actions on my psyche. For years, I had built our company together, but in doing so, I had let it become his company, not ours. Every success he claimed was a success we both shared, but the way he manipulated our partnership, and ultimately me, had left scars I didn't fully understand. When I finally let go of that, it was like a fog had lifted. I could breathe freely again. I could make decisions that were mine and mine alone. And with that new freedom came new opportunities. Business started growing faster than I had anticipated. I began getting offers from investors, media outlets wanting to feature my success, and other entrepreneurs reaching out to collaborate. I had become the person I'd always aspired to be, but without the baggage of a toxic past holding me back. In the midst of this success, however, Jason's shadow still loomed large. Even though I had made the decision to walk away from him for good, I couldn't ignore that he was still out there, struggling. It was hard to escape the occasional reminder of what we had once shared. I'd hear from mutual contacts that his company was crumbling, that he had lost the respect of his investors, and that things weren't going as well as he had hoped. I couldn't say I felt sorry for him. After all, he had made his choices. But part of me still wondered how someone who had once been my partner, someone I had trusted with my life, had ended up so lost. But I reminded myself each time that he wasn't my responsibility anymore. The lessons I had learned over the years had come at a heavy price, but they had shaped me into someone who no longer felt obligated to save people who weren't willing to save themselves. I had learned that people, no matter how close, would only ever respect you as much as you respected yourself. And I had spent too long sacrificing my own peace and self-worth for someone who didn't deserve it. One evening, after a particularly productive week, I received a message from Jason again. This time, it was more urgent, more desperate. He had reached out to me before, but this was different. The message was longer, more personal. He apologized again for everything he had done, for how he had treated me, and how he had let greed, ego, and ambition take over. This time, he admitted his mistakes. He acknowledged that he had taken more than he should have, that he had ignored the very person who had helped him get to the top in the first place. He said he understood now, finally, that it wasn't just about the company, but about the people who helped build it. And most shockingly, he said he realized how much he had lost by pushing me away. His words weren't just words anymore. They were full of regret, of self-awareness. It made me pause. Was this the moment where he finally understood the depth of what he had done? Or was this yet another ploy to get me to feel sorry for him, to come back and fix his mess? I didn't respond immediately. I sat with the message for a long time, unsure of what to do. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't ready to forgive him either. Part of me wanted to move on completely, without any lingering attachments to him, even in the form of a long overdue apology. But another part of me couldn't help but think that maybe this was the closure I needed, the validation that I had made the right decision, not only by walking away from him, but by choosing myself. The thing was, though, I didn't need Jason's apology to move on. I had already done that on my own. His admission, no matter how sincere, didn't change the fact that I had built something far bigger and better than I ever could have imagined with him. The truth was, I had already won. I drafted a response, but it wasn't what he expected. I thanked him for his words, acknowledged his apology, but I made it clear that I had moved on. There was no place for him in my life anymore, no room for him in the story I was writing for myself. It wasn't harsh, but it was final. I ended it by saying, I hope you find the peace you're looking for, but it's not something I can give you. I pressed send and didn't look back. It was liberating, knowing I had the power to decide who stayed in my life and who didn't. And it was also a reminder that sometimes the hardest part of moving forward isn't letting go of the people who hurt you. It's letting go of the idea that they'll ever change. In the end, I didn't need Jason's approval or his help to succeed. I had everything I needed within myself. From that point on, I continued to focus on my work, my growth, and my new life. The business kept flourishing, and I started to think about the bigger picture, what I could achieve now that I was free from the past. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and I knew without a doubt that I wasn't looking back anymore. Jason was part of a past life, one that had shaped me but didn't define me. I had everything I needed now, and I was finally at peace. As time passed, my business began to reach new heights. What had started as a modest idea, a spark of ambition, and a relentless desire to prove myself, had grown into something I could be proud of. The once distant dream of becoming a self-made millionaire was no longer a dream, it was my reality. I had secured clients, established partnerships with some of the biggest names in the industry, and built a team of talented individuals who shared my vision and values. The world was taking notice. Media outlets began reaching out to feature me, and other entrepreneurs started asking for mentorship. I had become a symbol of success, not just for my ability to build wealth, but for my ability to rise above adversity. Every step of my journey was a testament to resilience, to the idea that no matter how many times life knocked you down, you could always stand back up. But success, as I soon learned, wasn't just about business. It was about personal growth. It was about learning how to live with the scars of the past without letting them define who you were. And in many ways, my professional success had been intertwined with this personal evolution. The confidence I had gained in the boardroom mirrored the self-assurance I had built within myself. I wasn't just the woman who could close a deal or create a thriving business anymore. I was the woman who had learned to trust herself, to embrace her own worth, and to stop doubting her ability to create the life she wanted. Yet, despite all the victories, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was still unfinished. It wasn't the lingering thought of Jason; that chapter had been firmly closed. No, this feeling came from a deeper place, something that had been quietly building inside me for months. I had always been driven, always pushed for success, but there was a nagging emptiness, a sense that I wasn't fully satisfied. I realized what it was. It was redemption, but not the kind Jason had begged for. It was my own redemption, a personal reckoning with everything I had been through. In some way, I was still searching for closure, for a way to fully let go of everything that had happened in the past. The business was thriving, yes, but I was still carrying pieces of that old life, pieces that were keeping me from fully embracing my future. The truth was, I had never allowed myself to truly grieve. I had buried my pain under layers of success and achievements, convincing myself that pushing forward was the only way to survive. But I wasn't surviving anymore. I was thriving, and thriving meant facing the hard truths I had avoided for so long. One day, as I sat in my office looking at the progress I had made, it hit me. I needed to take a step back, not just from the business, but from everything. I needed to let go of the last remnants of the past and fully embrace the woman I had become. A woman who no longer sought validation from anyone, not even from my past self. So I made the decision to take a break. I left the city behind, took time away from work, and went on a soul-searching journey. I traveled to places that had always called to me, places where I could be alone with my thoughts, away from the noise of the world. I took long walks in nature, meditated, and allowed myself to simply be. It was in these moments of stillness that I truly found peace. I realized that redemption wasn't something I needed to earn or prove to anyone, least of all to Jason. It was something I had already claimed for myself through every challenge I had faced, every decision I had made to move forward, and every moment of self-awareness I had gained. This journey wasn't just about escaping my past, it was about accepting it. It was about acknowledging the hurt and betrayal I had experienced without letting it define me. I understood that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else's actions or approval. It had never been. It was intrinsic. I had worked hard for everything I had, and I had earned it. When I returned home, I was a different person. The business was still thriving, but now I viewed it from a place of complete clarity. I no longer felt the need to prove myself. I wasn't seeking approval or validation from anyone. I was simply doing what I loved, and in doing so, I was inspiring others to do the same. One evening, I received a message from an old colleague, someone who had worked with me back when I was still with Jason. He had left the company long before the split, but had always kept an eye on my progress. He was reaching out to congratulate me on my success and to tell me how proud he was of everything I had accomplished. It was a simple message, but it struck a chord with me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen. not for my achievements, but for the person I had become. It was a reminder that my worth was not determined by anyone's approval, not even Jason's. I had found my own worth through the journey of self-discovery and resilience, and that was the most important part of all. The road to redemption wasn't easy. It wasn't a one-time decision or a single moment of closure. It was a process, a slow, deliberate unwrapping of all the layers of self-doubt, resentment, and fear I had carried with me. And as I looked around at the life I had created, I knew that the redemption I sought had already come to pass. It had come in the form of a woman who could stand tall, unashamed, and unapologetic for the choices she had made. Jason had been part of my journey, yes, but he was no longer the author of my story. I was. And the story I was writing was one of empowerment, independence, and unapologetic success. As I sat back and reflected on everything I had overcome, I realized something profound. My journey wasn't just about building a business or creating wealth, it was about finding myself in the process. And that, in the end, was the true reward. Now, when I look at where I am today, when I see the empire I've built, the freedom I've created, and the peace I've found within myself, I realize that I'm not just a survivor. I'm a woman who has reclaimed her power, her peace, and her future, and that's worth more than any amount of money. As I sit in my office today, looking at the life I've built, I still can't quite believe how far I've come. There were times when I thought I'd never escape the shadow of my past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the feeling of being sidelined in my own story. But now, it feels like a distant memory, something that shaped me but no longer defines me. The final goodbye with Jason came in the form of a letter, not from him, but from his lawyer. The message was simple. We've decided to liquidate the remaining assets of the company. If you're interested in buying your share, let us know. I didn't need to think about it. The moment I read those words, I knew the past was over. There was no need to buy back a piece of something that no longer had any hold over me. I didn't need it to prove my worth or remind myself of what I had built. I had already claimed victory in my own way, on my own terms. I responded with a brief, polite note. No, thank you, I've moved on. And with that, the final piece of Jason's world, the one he tried to keep entangled with mine, was closed forever. It wasn't just a business that I had left behind. It was the version of myself that had been tied to him. The woman who was willing to sacrifice her own voice, her own dreams, to make someone else's life easier. I had shed that skin, and in doing so, I had become someone entirely new. What I've come to realize is that success is not just about what you build in the world, it's about what you build within yourself. When I walked away from Jason, I thought I was leaving behind a partnership. What I didn't expect was that I would also be leaving behind the person I was when I was with him. That woman was always second-guessing herself, always shrinking to fit someone else's idea of who she should be. But the woman I am now stands firm in her own power. She doesn't apologize for her success, for her choices, or for the life she's created. I don't need anyone's validation anymore, not Jason's, not anyone's. I've learned that true strength comes from within, and once you stop looking to others for approval, the weight you've been carrying disappears. I have learned to embrace my journey, flaws and all. I've learned to appreciate the hard work, the failures, and the triumphs. Each step has brought me closer to who I am now. The woman who built an empire from scratch, the woman who chose herself first, the woman who walks her own path, unshaken by the judgments of others. Looking back, I'm not angry with Jason anymore. I've let go of the resentment, the bitterness, and the pain. I've learned to forgive, not for him, but for myself. Holding on to that anger was never going to help me grow. What truly matters is how I've taken those experiences and turned them into something better, something stronger. The life I'm living now is a testament to the power of resilience, to the importance of standing up for yourself, and to the idea that you don't need anyone's permission to be great. It's a life I've created with my own hands, my own vision, and my own heart. So when I think about the journey that brought me here, I realize that it wasn't just about leaving Jason behind. It was about discovering who I really am and what I'm truly capable of. The story of my success, of my growth, isn't defined by my past or by anyone else's actions. It's my story, and it's one of redemption, power, and independence. As I look to the future, I know that it holds even greater things. But what matters most is that I'm finally living it on my own terms, and no one, not even Jason, will ever take that from me again.